Within this session, we are having two special guests from Portugal and from Chile. This is a plenary session dedicated to philosophy, as you already seen the program. A plenary session in which Jorge Humberto, PhD in moral philosophy from Atlântica Instituto, Universitário, Portugal, will give his speech on the topic of World Happiness Report. From the World Happiness Report, UN, to the figure of the corporate philosopher, and followed by Matias Quer, professor and researcher within Universidad de los Andes, Chile, sorry for that. A speech on new forms of totalitarianism from surveillance capitalism to transhumanism. I now salute the presence of our first plenary speaker, Jorge Humberto, PhD in moral philosophy from Atlântica Instituto, Universitário, Portugal. Hello, Jorge, welcome, and I kindly invite you to give your speech you prepared for us today. Thank you for joining us again.
Hello, Hannah. Hello, everybody. It is a great honor and pleasure to be here in this Congress for the second time. Today with a different topic. I hope you enjoyed the video. I did. I have my presentation on the video, a resume, I think. So I would like to share here some questions. I don't know if you have anyone to begin. If you have anyone, maybe could be a good start. No.
I asked you.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Your previous presentation in workshop or lectures, but still have one remain questions. Hope it's okay. You do counsel in only in organization, or you do individual consultation, individual counseling too in this way? It's only for business or enterprises, or it could be used your method in private consultation?
Yeah, interesting question. In fact, I begin with individual counseling 20 years ago, but now we are growing, and in Portugal, companies are asking philosophical services. So in the past 3 years, I work too with companies giving another tools, different tools, not only the project method, but another ones. So I do both in this moment.
Okay, and you said that it's a mixture between Socratic dialogue and philosophical counseling, as we already understand. It was a previous presentation conference of Oscar Brennifer in this Congress. So maybe it's Socratic dialogue, but then you mixed it with psychological approach, as I understand, and mixed with emotions. I asked questions to Oscar Brennifer, and I ask you the same questions. Maybe I will receive the same answer, or maybe a different one. And in existentialist psychotherapy, for example, we use meditation, something like Buddhist meditation or Tibetan or Kashmirian and so on. Is it for you possible to go together this kind of practice, meditation, and Socratic dialogue? What do you think? Is
okay.
Approach in one session, in one extended session?
Great question again. Thank you. First of all, I need to be clear with the approach of Oscar Brennifer. My project method is very different. I had a lot of dialogues with Oscar in the International Conference of Philosophical Practice all over the world. and it's always very interesting to change some and to share some ideas. I said some years ago, I think in South Korea, in the 12th Congress, more or less, that I don't believe that the method of Oscar Brevier can be a good method to philosophical counseling. And I have some reasons to say that, because you cannot forget that philosophical counseling, it is a service that you need to sell. Of course, you can give for free, and it is easier if you do that. But if you want to sell it, you cannot be very strong with the clients. You cannot put the clients crying and suffering, etc. So I think you need a method more friendly with counseling than with philosophy. You know, if you forget counseling, of course you will do a pure philosophy, applied pure philosophy. And that's why the method of Oscar Brevier is so strong and so provocative sometimes, and can have as a result some suffering to the client. And I don't know if the client will pay a consultation to cry all the sessions and to suffering all the sessions. So I think my approach is more it is near with the counseling, more friendly with the counseling than with only philosophy. You know, here a balance with both. Concerning the approach of psychology, as we said on Thursday here in this Congress, it is more the approach of my colleague Tiago Pita. Tiago Pita, he has a BA on philosophy and the PhD on psychology, and his method, clientocentrism, that method, yes, he works with psychology and with emotions, etc. My approach, project method, it is a rational one and a more philosophical one. I don't do counseling with psychology, only with philosophy. And I think I answered your question.
Yes, it was ambiguous previous time. Or if you do only philosophical or both kind of counseling, philosophical and psychological, and so on. That's I need this to ask these questions to clarify this approach of you. Thank you very much.
Great.
For this.
So let's start with some ideas. My topic here in this plenary speaking is about the World Happiness Report and the figure of corporate philosopher. So we need to understand the link between these two topics. So I am a researcher. I create and I am the principal investigator of that project. Contributions to Portugal in the World Happiness Report from United Nations. And we try to understand what we must do to have a better result for Portugal, okay? But first of all, let me share with you my definition of happiness, and maybe we will have here an important topic to discuss at the end if you want. So my definition of happiness is something like this. I think happiness is a state of consciousness that assesses the result, the outcome of my projects throughout of life. And here, when I give some workshops about the definition of happiness, I usually work some key concepts. For example, consciousness. What is the link between happiness and consciousness? It is very interesting to talk about this. And who knows, to make here a comparison between the philosophical approach and the psychological approach. The second keyword I would like to work in some workshops is about the assessment. What is the link between assessment and happiness? And the the third keyword is about project. That's why I called my method project method. This is the main reason, the definition of happiness. And we have here another reason to say why my method has a main objective to promote happiness on the client. So with the definition of happiness, the second step is to create a formula of happiness. And in that way, I created a new formula, and I have here 3 moments. The result, which I called happiness, and 2 steps. The first one is to create projects in the life of the client. And the second one is to promote the results, to the concretization of the achievement of the projects. This is the formula. Then I made a study about the versions of happiness, and I found 5 versions. You can see these in more detail in my video you have available in the YouTube of the Congress. And you can see we have the first version of happiness, happiness 1.0, which is a version about that people who is sitting in a chair waiting for happiness. It is a passive definition. And the second version is about a proactive definition. People who do mindfulness, for example, or meditation, or some techniques. So it is more advanced, this version of happiness. The happiness 3.0, it is a social one. We have today some studies. I suggest, for example, the study of the Harvard University, Robert Waldinger study with 80 years. And the conclusion is this version of happiness. So happiness is something about have good relations with a lot of quality, good social relations. The version 4.0, it is about technology. So we can use technology to promote happiness, to be in contact with, for example, this Congress with technology. It is great to know other people from other countries. If we don't have technology, it is impossible to know so many people and so many good ideas. And finally, the version 5.0, it is a global one with creativity. I think creativity, it will be the most important skill to the 21st century, and philosophy must work this skill. And it is an integrative, holistic version of happiness. So this is the first ideas of my research and my work, just to present the basis. And then we studied all the reports of happiness. They began on 2012. We have now 9 reports, world reports. And it is important to share with people the criteria, how this team assess happiness in the countries. So we have 6 topics. GDP per capita, it is the first one. The second one, life expectancy. The third one, generosity. The fourth, social support. The fifth, corruption perception. And the last one, freedom of choices. Then it is important to know the countries. In the first place, in all reports, we have Denmark, Switzerland, Norway, Finland. And here we can imagine, who knows happiness, it is a geographical issue, but it is not. But we can think the same.
I'm afraid we have to continue the discussion after
yes.
all the plenary session, all the speakers will give the speech. And please try to resume and get to the conclusion into 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, with all of this information about happiness in the world, we have a diagnosis that the world to resolve the crisis needs more philosophical work. That's why I talk about the figure of corporate philosopher. And here we have some references, such as Tom Morey's work that I suggest you to research, the work of Lumarinov too, the work of Luc de Brabander, and the work of Roger Steer. This is 4 important references in this kind of work, the corporate philosopher. And these reports, they defend that we need a more balanced work. So we already have the economical work, the sociological work, and the psychological work, 3 dimensions, 3 factors, but we don't have enough the philosophical work. That's why they defend an approach with the Aristotle theory of virtue. And I make here a link between this approach and the work of the corporate philosopher.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for your presentation. We will move forward to the next speaker. And I invite now Matias Quer to give his speech on new forms of totalitarianism from surveillance capitalism to transhumanism. Matias, do you hear us? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Lumen Editura, Antonio, Alexandra for your work, and especially Anna. I know you have been working for my presentation, the timing of the presentation here in Chile. It's still early, but it's great to be here again with the video. So thank you very much. So my presentation is mainly on political philosophy, and it's the idea that after the 20th century totalitarianism, we are facing some new forms of surveillance, domination, that could be in some ways similar to, or could lead to some political forms similar to the ones of totalitarianism, but not necessarily the same ones. So the name of the presentation and on the video that I delivered of new forms of totalitarianism is in some sort of way a rhetorical title only to get the attention of the people. I am not stating that necessarily neither surveillance capitalism or transhumanism are going to be totalitarianisms as were the Nazi and the Marxist, communist, Soviet totalitarianisms of the 20th century, but I do worry about some of the forms of surveillance and domination that could come in our societies in this century, especially through 2 main technologies. One are the ICTs, you know, information communication technologies, which we all know. We all have our phones, our laptops, our social media. So the surveillance that could come from these technologies, that's one. And that's what I explored through the concept of surveillance capitalism that it's common today in our literature. And the other one are the nano, bio, cognitive, and psychological technologies. These technologies, the nano, bio, info, and cognitive technologies known as the NBICs. So these ones would be the technologies related with transhumanisms and would be the ones related with all the, especially nano and biotechnology that we use today, or could be, and we're going to be using more and more on our, especially on our health systems, that could also give us many upgrades on our health and new therapies, but also are a risk in terms of the information that the great tech and biotech companies could have of our health, on our thinking, on our health data, etc. So If totalitarianism was a specific political phenomenon of the 20th century, characterized by the absolute control of the entire society by the state and the single party through terror, totalitarianism maybe has disappeared in this form, but however, many philosophers, and here I'm thinking of a French philosopher called Chantal del Sol, has identified that some of the foundations of these totalitarianisms of the 20th century are still present with the same objectives, but new means, not so the means of terror and repression, but some new means that are persistent with these objectives of totalitarianism in our society today. So we live today in a post-totalitarian and post-modern period of time where there are new threats of dominance over the human being and society. So I'm going to divide this just into really quickly in two main parts. The first one is surveillance, ICTs, and surveillance capitalism. This would be what I was talking about, the control over society. So the new tech companies and sometimes in alliance with the governments, and this was the famous case is the one of the Snowden case, you know, what Snowden revealed, where tech companies are have an alliance in some sort of way with governments to surveil and control society. So through social media, there is today a great monitoring of what people say, what they do, what they buy, what they think. I think it's maybe common for all of us if we like, I don't know, in my case, one soccer team, or maybe you like one kind of movie or TV series or whatever, and then you're going to receive lots of ads in this of this topic or theme on your phone or your computer or in your email. So that sort of monitoring, which we know is greatly used in capitalism in the capitalist economical models for sales, could also be used in political and social fields to monitor what are your political preference, and the famous case in this is Cambridge Analytica. You know, the case which you can watch on Netflix, the documentary, but how monitoring people's political preferences and then delivering the specific speeches you want to hear, and in that sort of way controlling through polling, controlling votations and democracy, you know, so in some sort of way hacking or bypassing democracy. So I think that this first aspect is really one we should worry about, the sort of way in which new technologies, new ICTs are surveilling our thinking, our buying, our actions, and how this, if compenetrated with governments and the state's power, could lead to some sort of, I don't know if totalitarianism, but strong governments that have a great deal of information about each of their citizens. That's the first one. And that also can manipulate information, all these fake news that we know, it's a great topic today, manipulating the information that we receive and the one that they deliver, and in this way controlling our society. That's the first one, it's society's control. And the second one is the one that is related with transhumanism and these nano and biotechnologies. And this would be the control not over the whole of society, but a great control over each person. So the human being could be greatly surveilled and controlled. Of course, not all transhumanism is supportive of this idea. In no means. I am not stating that transhumanist philosophers or thinkers are promoting a new form of surveillance or control. I'm just stating that if we incorporate strongly and radically these new nano biotechnologies, we are going to be on a risk on the risk of being surveilled in all our thinking, on all what our health is, where we are in each moment, through GPS technology and all of that sort of things. Today we know there's new technologies that are tracking our thought process in our minds, or could do that, our dreaming, for example. So what I'm worried about in this field is what could happen if also the state, government, or great big tech companies will have access to, for example, what I dreamt, what were my dreams were last night. Okay, something that also I don't control, you know, and I don't know what they mean either. But maybe they could know what my dreams were, and they could use them either to coerce me, or to blackmail me, or to sell me something, you know. It could be all sorts of things. Also, if I have some kinds of nanotechnologies, for example, in my blood to repair the tissues, etc. What happens is, if these nanotechnologies in the future have some GPS technology, and they can set me in which place I am in every minute, and the government has access to this. Okay, so what kind of freedoms would be on risk with this sort of technologies? So I don't mean that neither surveillance capitalism nor transhumanism are promoting this sort of control by the state and the big tech companies. I don't think they are, but I think that there is a risk there in both cases that we should discuss, that we should acknowledge and discuss. So my final recommendation or call is to dialogue, because I think we have to make our democracies stronger. And I think the best way of doing this is by discussing the risks that democracy are facing right now in the world, especially in the Western world. And these risks, I think these two risks I have presented today are two of the main ones for democracy. And that's the reason why we should discuss them and make new laws, legislations, have cultural and social understandings about what sort of freedoms we think could be exposed or could be damaged with these technologies, and how we are going to let big tech companies and governments go on with their research and their new technologies, but within some laws and some margins that we think should not be trespassed. So I think this is my final call to dialogue, and to have on mind that we need to strengthen our democracy, and the best way to do it is through this democratic dialogue to promote our freedoms, and also prevent the risks of these new forms of surveillance and domination. Thank you.
Thank you, Matias, for the presentation. Thank you for your interesting ideas. I will now invite all the participants to give their feedback on this sessions, on these presentations, because there were two presentations dedicated to philosophy. The one that you just listened was about new forms of totalitarianism, from surveillance capitalism to transhumanism. And the first one from the World Happiness Report, UN, to the figures of corporate philosopher. Please feel free to address your questions. I already have a raised hand, Alexandra.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you to both participants for their presentations. They were extremely interesting, and I also viewed their presentations on YouTube. Thank you for that. I have a question for Dr. Diaz, and it made me think. I was a lawyer for 12 years, and I've managed to come in contact with a lot of corporate organizations. And usually I saw that in corporations, there is a philosophy, and I use the term of philosophy in the sense that we use the term when we say that someone has their own life philosophy. Okay, so a little bit looser than in the strict term when we say philosophy. So corporates sometimes, usually, if they're large companies, they have a philosophy behind everything that they do, or at least this is how they present themselves to the public. They have a public philosophy. And the same philosophy should be applied within the company, and the same values should be promoted within the company. And when we are speaking about the relationship between the employees and the head office, the corporate staff that is leading that company. So in many times I noticed that there is this this public philosophy that is shown as a PR tool, but then when you go inside the company, you see that the same philosophy is either not applied when people exchange values, or I don't know, or it is not understood by the people who work within the company. And when speaking about happiness and the feeling of fulfillment within the workplace, I was just wondering if you could give us your thoughts about what this might do to the value system of the employees if the publicly displayed philosophy of that corporate organization is not respected within the corporation itself. Thank you.
Can I answer now, Anna?
Please. Yes, please.
Okay. Alexandra, thank you very much for your interesting question. Indeed, that's all of the topics we usually work with companies in a philosophical way. I loved your link between the concept of philosophy of life and the concept of the philosophy of the company. It is very important to see these. If you don't see these, we cannot work in a good way. So in companies, in fact, what we found the vision, we found the values, we found the important question of identity. We found two, and I would like to speak about two important things nowadays, which is the question of change, and the CEOs, they have a lot of difficulty to manage this, because if you are in a company that is changing every day, it is impossible to work. You know, because people, they need safety, they need balance, they need some objectivity, etc. If you are changing every day, today we have this vision, no, tomorrow we have another one, and etc. It is not possible to have results. And that's why, I don't know the situation in other countries, but here in Portugal, we have 90% of small, medium companies, you know, and we have a big problem that these small and medium companies, they usually have only 3 years of life. You know, they begin as a startup, then they try to develop and to be in the market, but in 3 years they finished. They cannot succeed. It is a big problem. That's why they have some difficulty to manage the question, the philosophical question of change. The second one I want to choose to answer you is the question of the models. So the philosopher, we work with models of thinking, models of vision, etc. And people need models. And we need to find which is the model of that company. And we must work that in a more deep way. That's why, because the companies, they don't have philosophers working there, they live a big lack of identity, a big lack of balance, you know. So that's the main reason why the companies, they cannot succeed more than 3 years, you know. This is a structural problem here in Portugal. I imagine this problem is in other countries, of course. But that's why I defend in my speech and in my articles in these 2 years, I'm working on this topic. I defend the importance of a corporate philosopher in companies. And why? Because CEOs, they are already philosophers, but they don't know. They must decide in a philosophical way, but they don't have any course of philosophy. They don't have any skills of philosophy, but they are working on philosophy. Interesting, this question. So what I suggest is companies to invest to have a corporate philosopher. And let me say one thing just to finish my answer. I found some companies with CEOs with a philosophical course. For example, the CEO of LinkedIn, the CEO of PayPal, and the CEO of, let me remember, other company. I don't remember the name, but we have some in this moment. And this is the reason. They felt that we need philosophy, but I don't have any course. So I am the CEO, I will study philosophy to answer the change of the challenge of change, okay? And I finished for here.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention, Alexandra. Thank you for the answer. And I will...
Can I ask another question?
Oh, yes, please. That's was the idea, the intention.
Actually, Professor Quer's paper made me think of some of my own research. And currently I'm doing some research that has a lot to do with social awareness. And after viewing his presentation, a question just popped into my mind. And because I have Dr. Quer here, I can ask that question directly. So my question is, how much do you think, or at all, do you think that large masses of population are aware of the fact that we are in danger of being part of new forms of totalitarianism that we cannot even begin to imagine because of the advances in technology and science? Do you think that this is an awareness that should be pursued, or that people are already aware, or it shouldn't be pursued, that only, I don't know, specialists should make policy on this issue? I would just like to get an insight from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. So I think, of course, I don't know, I don't have the data, and I think this could be very different in different countries with these different educational levels and social systems, you know. But I tend to believe that mostly larger populations are not aware at all of these risks. Sometimes these kind of documentaries that I mentioned, that they're like the Social Network one and the one of Cambridge Analytica, that they're in Netflix and they get popular. Sometimes they raise some sort of awareness, but I think it's really momentary. It's just the kind of awareness that you say, oh, here's a problem, and maybe I don't have to post all my personal information on social media. I will delete this or make my account more private or so. But that's something that it lasts, I don't know, a day, a week, but it's not like a profound awareness from the larger population on the risks of having their information exposed or having their personal data given to these large companies, and through their large companies, maybe to the governments. I don't think that that a larger populations are aware of these risks. And that's the reason I think to have this democratic dialogue that I was proposing, we need first to raise awareness on larger population, because if it's not an issue or a concern for most of the people of a country or the world, then it's not going to be for the politicians, because we know that politicians, of course, are worried of the things, or should be worried of the things that worry their citizens, you know. So we have to make first the awareness to promote this dialogue.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you for the questions, Alexandra. Thank you for both of your presentations, Professor Diaz and Professor Quer. Because we are running out of time, I'm giving special thanks for all the participants, and let us hear us soon for the next sessions of World Lumen Congress. Thank you again for your participation. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Anna. Thank you, everyone. Antonio, Alexandra.
Nice.